Hello, 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 everyone. Hi, Sena, Carlos, Efe, Paddle Soup, Miriam, Olivier. Hi, everyone. Hi, hi, hi. Okay, Frank is here too. So, welcome again, everyone. Week 7 of whining during COVID-19. Wine Talks with Frank Smulders, Master of Wine, and Irem and Wine Academic. Let's invite Frank and start our topic of... Hello.
Hello.
Hi, Frank.
How are you?
I'm good, yourself?
Are you tired from striking on Friday?
Actually, I'm not tired from striking on Friday, but I'm tired of like the whole emotional hassle of what has been happening this weekend here in Barcelona and entire Spain, but mostly Barcelona. Everyone, every single person, not even once in their life went on jogging. They just put on like some shoes and went out. So I'm kind of tired of that emotional and I don't know, this
So there was 1 million people in the street.
unbelievable. 8 a.m. in the morning on Saturday, and I went to run, and I've been living in this neighborhood since 1.5 years, and I have never seen so many people jogging ever in this 1.5 years.
Yeah.
And then obviously I went out, and then in 2 minutes I came back home. You know.
Yeah.
So, anyways, how was your weekend? All good?
Let's see what happens. In a way, I understand people because it's driving everybody crazy. Meanwhile, and I have a feeling that the approach that we have in, for example, the Netherlands is not that bad. We have a bit more freedom, and then it makes it easier to stay disciplined. But even here, people are not 100% disciplined, not always. But yeah, it's driving people crazy.
Yeah,
it's driving
obviously.
me. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so we have this week. We have 3 interesting topics. Today, Oak-Phobia, and Wednesday, wine fault, and Friday, wine and food pairing nonsense / science. We'll see about that. Sorry?
That will be a short session.
Yeah. Yeah, we will see that. It's going to be a fun session to talk about. So today it's Oak-Phobia. So, I mean, influence of wood in wine obviously is complex and very controversial issue. We will for sure talk about it. But first, I want to start this topic with the insights, a bit of a background of this, what has happened. I mean, you have 35 years experience in the industry, and given your experience and knowledge, like, when did not liking oak became trendy? Because if you think about like this top wines from Montrachet to top groves Bordeaux, all the best wines are produced with oak, with wood. So when did it? What happened there? Like, when did not liking oak became very trendy or cool?
Maybe it's a bit of a counter reaction on what happened in the 1980s, because in the 1980s, wine making, so the whole process of vinification in the cellar, became more and more technical. Oak began to play a more important role. For example, I mean, oak was always there in Bordeaux, for example, but it was much less new oak. It was more used oak, but it was always there. And the same for Spain, of course, with the classic Crianza Reserva wines. But for example, how to master the fermentation of white wine in barrel, that is something that really became much more an issue in the 1980s. It became much better mastered, actually, than before. And with that, the amount, and with the growing popularity of Chardonnay, of course, the use of oak for white wine making also became more and more popular. But I think what happened also was that during the 1990s we talked about wine ratings previously on the 0 scale. We talked about Parker points, and in the 1990s, influenced by again mostly I would say Wine Advocate and Wine Spectator, oak became more and more um, used and more noticeable, of course, in wine, because people began to use more and more new oak. And actually, these wines got better ratings quite often. But, you know, to be fair, people also liked it better. So it's not like I resent the idea that somebody like Parker was forcing us into a certain direction. It was going hand in hand. Parker liked oak, but actually everybody liked oak. And that's the way it was. And really. But maybe or certainly it went to a point where oak became too influential in winemaking, and too many wines were both red and white were too heavily influenced by oak. And in a way, I think what we see now is a counter reaction to that, where people will say, "Okay, this is enough. Let's go down." But there's also something else playing a role in these trends in the wine world. You know, if you want to show that you have expertise, if you want to show that you've got a taste which is better than the average taste, you will always look for, you know, a different direction, because by choosing the different direction from the mass, you can show that you know better and you have a better palate. Or actually you have a better taste, because that is literally what you want to show. And I think this is also playing a major role now. Don't get me wrong. I have over the years, and you know, I've been working a lot as a consultant in the first decade of the 21st century in Spain, and I've been telling people, go down with the oak. You know, so don't get me wrong. I, for one, and somebody who wants to get who always wanted to have less oak in Spanish wines and in wine in general. But we shouldn't overdo it also, you know, like seeing oak as a devil or suffering from Oak-Phobia, that is a bit crazy. That makes no sense either, because if it is well used, oak can have, in many cases, a very positive influence on wine in many different ways, you know, not just by flavor, but actually by oxygenation, etc.
Yeah, I want to talk about this effect in wine, but a bit later. But before that, I want to ask you, I mean, your opinion as well. Like, yes, lately, or like since maybe it's a counteraction, since 90s, the consumers prefer less oak, not overdoing with oak. And as you say, wine writers and sommeliers, now they say that no, oak is, you know, it's much better. It's cool. They sound more knowledgeable. But the winemaker side, okay, yes, not overdoing with oak, not marking the wine with oak too much. I understand that. But when winemaker says, no, we don't use any oak, and when they are like super against it, I don't understand that approach. It's like, why all or never, you know, why can't you use oak moderately in your wine?
That's exactly my point. And that is, of course, a way to go with the flow and try to serve a certain market. It's not that you really always need oak. I'm just thinking, for example, of Foradori in Trento in northern Italy, who has probably the largest tinaja cellar in the world. They skipped all the oak and bought a huge amount of tinajas in Spain. It's a beautiful cellar, and the wines are beautiful. And so they are able to make great wine, red wine, tannic red wine, without having any oak. So yes, why not? But again, you know, what I wouldn't like about all this is when people, whether they are winemakers or wine lovers, when they start to condemn everything that contains oak, because that is ridiculous, and see oak as a sort of an unnatural influencer of wine, that is ridiculous. Actually, I'm quite convinced that wines that are made in tinaja also taste a little bit of tinaja. Actually, you can sort of taste that kind of clayey character in the wines, which is fine. I don't care, but it's not 100% neutral either. You know.
And do you think that the aging possibility of the wines which are made with tinaja can compete with oak? Can they be really long lasting? Or do we have experience with that, enough experience to see to compare and contrast?
Yeah, I'm not sure actually. Yeah, maybe. I'm not sure. I don't know. Probably there's not much expertise about that. But because of course, but I mean, it's not that you need oak to have a long aging wine, because the best aging white wine in the world is Riesling, and it's always made without oak. Or at
Yes.
least, or although traditionally they were made on oak, but on very big, very old oak foederless. You know, they're very, but they wouldn't show any oak influence.
Yeah. So actually, that's a really great point that you are mentioning now, because I wanted to talk a little bit of the fermentation in barrel and the maturation as well. So when we say that using of oak, I think lately the understanding is like having the maturation in post-fermentation and going in the oak. And do you think that also the winemakers, they're trying to avoid fermentation in barrel, like big vats, bigger sizes, if we don't think about the cost issue and the hygiene, cleaning, so on and so forth? Do you think is it lately avoided? And if you ferment the wine in barrel, rather than just fermenting stainless tank or concrete and putting in the barrel to mature, doesn't it give better result, like for the harmonious blends and
With
so many other
white wines now, right? About white wines, huh?
I mean, I'm asking general, both for red and white.
Yeah, but I mean, fermentation of red wine in barrel is possible, but it's very rare, because you need very expensively adapted barrels, and it makes a bit less sense. But it's true that for white wine, think of Chardonnay, think of certain Chenin Blancs, for example, or the best Sauvignon Blancs that are barrel fermented wines, that indeed doing the fermentation on oak and then age it furthermore is giving a better result and a less oaky wine in flavor and aroma, compared to the wines that were fermented in stainless steel and then aged in barrel. I mean, that's not a very good technique. So if you want to make an oak to white wine, you should do it from the start.
From the start, no?
Yeah. And this is, as I said before, this is where a lot of progress has been made in the understanding of that process. And actually, it was the late Denis Dugaudieu from Bordeaux, who died 1.5 years ago now, almost 2 years ago, I think, if I remember well, 2018. He was the sort of worldwide expert on that, professor at the University of Bordeaux, and also a winemaker, Claude Eden, and Doisy, I think, is also his. He did a lot of research. He was the expert, and he actually was highly respected for his knowledge about white wine fermentation in barrel, even in Bourgogne. Can you imagine a Bordeaux professor? Yeah. So, but red wine barrel fermentation, that's quite rare, I would say.
Yeah. I mean, also it's very difficult to clean it afterwards, and it's gonna be like really labor and cost.
Difficult to get the grapes in and out a wooden barrel. You need a special opening, and it's possible. It does exist, but it's
complicated. Actually, there's a study. Obviously, I'm not really sure, but I think it made sense. For example, when you ferment the wine in the barrel, the yeast covers inside of the wood, and then it kind of gives less interaction between wine and wood. So you have less wood aroma and extraction in the wine, rather than just putting the wine in the wood, right?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Well, but the other thing is, of course, also what you clearly see in Spain, for example, is that, of course, in traditional Spanish legislation regarding crianza reserva, gran reserva, wine needs to age in small oak, basically, literally in barricas, which is 225 liters. Now, in some regions, for example, in Navarra, you can use 350-liter barrels, but that's the maximum. So basically, small oak, and this is where you see, for example, somebody like, let's say, Alvaro Palacios, who is not making any wine labeled Reserva, Gran Reserva, or whatsoever. What you see there is that in recent years he moved more and more, not completely yet, but more and more from barricas to much bigger barrels, to, let's say, demi-muid 600-liter barrels, for example, or 500-liter barrels. So he is clearly he's putting everything in oak, but he's clearly lowering the flavor influence of the oak in his wine. Yeah. But on the other hand, Champagne, where I've been going now for 10 years in a row, every springtime with students, you see more and more oak in Champagne nowadays. In every visit, you realize that the amount of oak being used for the fermentation of the base wine or the aging of the reserve wines, the amount of oak in the cellars is, generally speaking, growing. You see it more. So actually, Champagne is a reverse trend. There's more oak.
Yeah. Talking about trends, there's a question here. Ricardo is asking, amphora. Is the amphora the new oak? So meaning the amphora is going to be the new trend, replacing the oak? What do you think?
Yeah, well, it has been growing. Amphoras, tinajas, concrete eggs, concrete whatever, concrete fermentation tanks like at Cheval Blanc, for example, and Pontet Canet. This has been growing in recent years. Pingus, Peter Sisek, he moved, actually for fermentation, he moved from stainless steel to concrete, but then he began to regret it again because he realized that the quality of the concrete fermentation tanks is not always up to scratch. But yes, of course, but let's not forget that the trend to move from oak to clay or concrete is a very small trend. We're talking about that top layer of the market, 1% of the market, or actually less even, where this is beginning to play a role. Let's say if you look at total volume of wine in the world, I bet that there is 1,000 times more wine made with oak chips than with amphoras. It's a trend, but it's a very small trend.
Yeah. Talking about trends, Anna is asking, is it use of oak depending on trends? It is in the beginning, I think, what we a little bit discussed, right?
Apparently.
Yeah.
But you know what? I think if you look on the long run at wine how it is now, until 50 years ago, until the 1970s, wine was consumed by a very small elite group of people. It was consumed by the happy few all over the world. I'm talking about the high-end wine. And now good quality wine has become available for a much, much bigger audience. Younger people, you don't have to be, we're not all rich. Very international. There are wine lovers all over the world. And what you have seen is that whereas wine has basically been sort of rather the same for 200 years in a row, we are now running from one trend to the other in a very short period of time. Yeah. And it's driving me a little bit nuts because I'm not against changes. It's wonderful that there is so much diversity and so much happening in the wine world. It's great. What I do not like about it is that people are happily running into a trend and then start condemning everything else just to prove that they understand what wine is all about and that they've got the best palate and the best taste of everybody. That's what I do not like about it. And you should never forget, trends come and go. And every trend we now consider a trend, it will go again. It will disappear as well, because that's the nature of trends. Look at what the clothes we're all wearing. That's exactly proving my point.
What do you mean?
Well, we wouldn't.
The clothes trends
wear
generally.
anything that we were wearing 20 years ago. It looks completely ridiculous now. And the same will happen with many wine trends. That in 20 years' time, we'll say, oh my God, people were really stupid 20 years ago doing this or doing that.
Yeah. But also, if you think about the clothes and fashions, the trends keep repeating themselves. So now, like, for example, this is what I'm wearing is like kind of more 70s, and now we are in 2010, you know? You always go back to travel in the history and then bring it back, you know? But also, and also what you said is, sorry, there's a delay, sorry. No, go ahead, be my guest.
No, I just wanted to say, I was thinking of the hipster movement, because that was very much going back, and it's already a bit gone now, hipster. The days of hipster are almost done now, I think. But what you should also realize, and it's the same for fashion and the clothes you wear, is that, yes, it's true, but it's a modern day interpretation of the trend of 20 years ago. Because you would compare that shirt that gives you a 70s feel, you would compare it with the real stuff from the 70s, you would realize that it's actually still quite different.
Yes.
That they just took one thing, the print or whatever, but not the shape or, you know.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Yeah. So also what you were saying before about the trends, there is also controversy, I think, in the wine industry and wine world within itself, because yes, in wine world, people are trying to look for different things, authentic wine and so on and so forth. But in the meantime, I think they're becoming a little bit more narrow-minded. They're not really open because either like, I don't like oak or I like natural wines. It's just like sticking to one idea.
Exactly. Because it's because everybody, not everybody, but so many people trying to prove that they are a person of very good taste. And I think we all should stop doing that, you know, because it makes you narrow-minded. If that is what you want to prove, look at me, I'm special, I know wine, I have a different, it narrows down the whole discussion. This is actually exactly my point with natural wine. I'm not against natural wine, but I'm against how the people who love natural wine are defending it by looking down upon everything else. And that's an attitude I really hate, actually. I would never do that.
Yeah. So actually, we can maybe do another session about natural wines. There are some questions. Tiny is asking two questions. One is, what do you think about other types of oak, like American, Hungarian, and different parts of oak from different parts of France? And he's also asking, do you think that it's going to be a new emerging oak use winemaking country? Will it be? Could it be that we will see a new emerging oak production countries?
Yeah, maybe. I think, you know, I generally would say I prefer European oak to American oak because I find American oak often too aromatic. I mean, but at the end, of course, it depends on the kind of wine you want to make. And there are beautiful Spanish wines made with American oak. Of course, there are. But generally speaking, I prefer European oak. If we talk about European oak, then I don't think France has the monopoly on high quality oak. That's not true. But it's surely true that some of the finest oaks do come from France for winemaking, sure. But there is great quality oak from Hungary, for example, from Russia. You know,
from Slovenia.
From
Slavonia, from Croatia.
Slavonia. Yes.
Yeah, Slavonia,
yeah. Slavonia. Even Austria. I mean, one of the most famous barrel makers nowadays is, of course,
how do you call it? Steiner? No.
Stockinger.
Sorry? Stockinger, yeah.
Yeah, although his small barrels are not that great, but his bigger barrels, the fullers, they are really fantastic. You know, so yeah, no, there's good oak in many places. Even in Austria.
So another question from Turkey, Şarap Atölyesi. How do we define the timing on oak integration in the wine? Do you believe that after a certain period of time, does oak aromas can lower down and gets more integrated into wine?
Oh, definitely. If you wait long enough, it depends on the wine, but if you wait long enough, oak will almost completely disappear. Yeah. No, definitely, yeah. And this is of course maybe another point. We drink wine much younger than we did 50 years ago, much younger. And because of that, of course, oak is very often not very well integrated and still too dominant. But if you've got great Bordeaux or great, I mean, take white Burgundy. The top white Burgundies, the best Premier Crus and Grand Crus when they are young, I'm sorry, but they're overloaded with oak. So you have to wait 10, 20 years. And then the wine will come around and you'll get to a point where the oak is so low in the nose and in the aromas and so well integrated, then the wine becomes truly lovely. But when they are young, many white Burgundies are way too oaky.
One more question from Gonja. Do you think oak preference have a relation with the local cuisine and the food habits? Maybe we can talk about this on Friday's session as well. But I don't think so. I think it's proximity.
No. We'll talk about that on Friday, about food and wine pairing. But I'll tell you one thing. In my 35 years career, I have never, ever met a winemaker who said, I made this wine because of our local kitchen, because it matches so well. This is not what happens. No. Okay. No.
Great. So we already did a little bit teaser for Friday's session.
Yes.
Yeah. Great. One comment from Turkey. Mustafa Çamlıca says, as a producer in Turkey, which I really like the wines, says that even in Turkey, East Black Sea region, we have very good oaks, but we don't have craftsmen to produce the barrels. I mean, that's true as well. Huh? It's a very important skill.
Yeah.
It's an art.
What you can do in that case is buy the oak there, send it to a good barrel maker, for example, in Austria, like Stockinger, ask him to make barrels, you know. It is possible, it happens, things like that. Maybe not in Turkey, but generally speaking, this happens. But it's true, that wine making good barrels is really an art. And even in France, where you have a lot of barrel makers, you will find quite important quality differences between the barrel makers. It makes me think of a remark of Christina Wellenschitz, a good friend of mine. Have you met her? A winemaker from
Austria.
Yeah.
Yeah, I met her in where did I meet her? In Tuscany, I think.
Probably,
Tuscany. Yeah.
Very good friend, and she said, you know, that they were no longer buying the top French barrels because they realized that they never got the quality that the top winemakers in France got. So apparently the French barrel makers are sending their best barrels, keeping them in France and selling slightly lower qualities outside the country. I cannot control if that is true, but when she said that, I said, yeah, but you may have a point there. I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah. Very interesting. It's true. Yeah. Okay, perfect. I think for this topic we can go on, but I think we did cover many parts of it. Yeah. Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you everyone for the questions and comments. Thank you, Frank. And on Wednesday we will be here with wine faults.
Wine faults, yes. Let's talk about Brettanomyces. That's one of my favorite wine faults.
Okay. Okay, great. Perfect. Thank you, Frank. See you on Wednesday.
Nice evening.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.